Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and let's welcome Sri Hari Mohan. And to join him in the conversation, we have Ambassador Pankaj Saran. Sri Pankaj Saran is a former diplomat and Deputy National Security Advisor from 2018 to 2021 with over 40 years of experience. He served as India's ambassador to Russia and High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Currently, he is the convener of NatStrat and a member of the National Security Advisory Board. He has worked closely with successive prime ministers on global strategy, maritime security and technology security, and is a regular contributor to national security discourse. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Pankaj Saran. Gentlemen, demystify the export control regime for our manufacturers and startup. Over to you.
Hello. Yeah, thanks. Okay, you can hear me. Thank you very much. I want to start off by thanking the BDTS for inviting me today for this discussion and to be on the panel with Sri Hari Mohan. So we've had a very good session before this, talking about defense exports. But it's very important that we also focus on partnerships, on policy and export control. I think that's the subject of our discussion. As was brought out, this is a new area for India, defense exports. We have traditionally been a defense importing country, and there are lots of studies which have been done which show how many hundreds of billions of dollars we have spent since 1947 importing defense equipment. And if you think of it, all that money has been spent by us in hard currency that has helped to generate jobs and kept the defense industry alive in other countries. And if only we had acted earlier, we could have prevented this one-way flow of hard currency outside India and use that money for development of our own defense industry. Now, since there are different stakeholders, its whole project, which is one is the consumer, which is the armed forces, the second are the producers, which used to be only the government enterprises, and the third are the policy makers, which is government. There always used to be this conflict and different objectives between the consumer and the producer and the policy maker. I think biggest contribution in the last 10 years has been the realization that we need to shift from being only an importer to also being an exporter. The challenges are many because firstly, we did not have a competitive defense industry, and there I would very much like to give the floor to Mr. Hari Mohan to tell us. He has his entire life he has spent in defense ordnance. Are we learning fast enough to transit from being an importer to a manufacturer and then an exporter? Number one. And number two, the agents of change, are they evolving in the sense that are we going to continue to rely on the government enterprises and ordnance factory boards to shifting to the private sector? And how easy is that going to be? Because the private sector is totally new to this domain. So this is the first, I think, issue, whether we are capable of and we are successful in undertaking the shift. The second set of issues which was brought out again in the previous session very rightly. The defense industry is a unique industry. It is not like any other civilian industry because of the nature of the product. So whenever you start talking of export of defense, you have to bring in the considerations of geopolitics. Who are you exporting to? Is it a friend? Is it foe? And related to that, even if it is a friend and you are this time the exporter, what controls are you going to exercise on leakage of technology? Because what we have learned as an importer is that the most difficult part of the puzzle is technology. No defense manufacturer in the world, not even your best friend, is willing to part with the technology, because that is what separates him from the rest of the competition. So for him it is a survival question. He will never part with technology. So if we are going to become an exporter, how do we deal with this same issue that this time we are the technology holder, we are the IP holder, and are our systems sophisticated enough to connect the dots between the producer, the exporter, the government here, and the consumer who is sitting outside India? So if it is Armenia or any other country, what is the decision-making process that will allow or not allow a private manufacturer from exporting to country A, B, or C? I think here also, while we are members of all the arms control groups and so on, I think we are still not advanced enough to have the right systems in place. So that's the second set of issues. And the third, of course, relates to the relationship between exports and our own indigenous demand. You would have heard many times private exporters or manufacturers saying that they find it much easier to export what they manufacture outside India than to sell within India to the consumer, which is the armed forces. And every time they go out to export, the first question that is asked by the importer is, are you selling to the Indian armed forces? So this is again a very vicious cycle, and I don't know whether we are able to break it, because that leads to the subsidiary issue about procurement from private sources by the armed forces. Here again, it's a vicious cycle. The private player is not willing to put investment into his production unless he sees a rate of return and unless he sees some guarantee of offtake of an order. The armed forces or the ministry, on the other hand, does not seem to have mastered yet the art of saying, I will buy from you, because that means changing a whole set of government rules, regulations. So if the orders are not guaranteed, the investor is not put his money. So how long can we go on playing this game without addressing or breaking this vicious cycle of production and demand? So these are some issues, and based on your own experience of a generation starting with the ordnance factory, today the corporatization has happened, and that also was a leap of faith. I mean, I know there was so much resistance from the ordnance factories for corporatization because of their own problems, and finally it has happened. It has taken us 50, 60 years. How fast can we accelerate this process, let's say, by 2035, in the next 10 years. And we also have to, I think, look at this industry from the point of view that, unlike any other product, defense or military hardware is a monopoly of only maybe 10 or 15 countries in the world. So if 10 or 15 countries control the military technology and production, that means the rest of the 170 countries are basically importing military hardware. Can we break into this market, which is so tightly controlled, which is driven completely by economies of scale? So how well can you compete? I'm not even saying the top 5 defense manufacturers, because as was brought out, they are looking at volumes of hundreds of billions of dollars, if not more. They have an ecosystem, they have a supply chain, they have vertical integration, which spans decades. So this is not an easy business to be in. And marginal successes are okay, but if you really want to be a serious player, but more importantly, a credible player, then what kind of things we should do? So many issues and many thoughts for you to share.
Very good afternoon to all the dignitaries present here and the entire audience, and my co-speaker, Colonel General Panksaranji. First of all, let me mention to you, our Saran Saab has really thrown multiple dimensions. We have all kind of examples we'll have to see one by one. Like if you see that we are exporting something, and are we guarding our country's interest? If a private company exporting something, is the country's interest is guarded? See, if you look at the products, if you look at the, very much in the public domain, we are talking of exporting BrahMos, we are talking of exporting attacks gun, we are talking of exporting many other platforms and full-fledged equipments. Now, whenever these exports are taking place, definitely the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of External Affairs both examine in detail to which country the equipment is getting exported. So it is it is the duty of MEA and MOD put together that they guard the interests of the country. And the company which exports that equipment, the company also ensures that they guard their own interest. They will export in a manner so that the customer remains dependent on them for a substantial period of time. And this is what has been happening with us when we were importing. Like when we imported T-72 tank, we know that how much time we have taken. By the time we have completed 95% indigenization of T-72 tank, we were asked to switch over to the next tank, that is T-90 tank. So this is how Russians have guarded their interest. But I only want to say this, that in this TOT-driven manufacturing, what we have done in last 50, 60 years, a huge ecosystem has got developed in the country. See, when we are making a T-90 tank or T-72 tank, you can say 50% we are outsourcing. 50% of its value is getting manufactured in the country by MSMEs and maybe some leading companies. So it's a huge ecosystem available in the country if you want to make any tank, any defense equipment. Suppose you want the latest generation tank to be manufactured in India, and a leading company is going to manufacture that tank, battle tank. I am sure they need to set a facility only for 30% of the value. 70% they can outsource. And that kind of an ecosystem is already available. Now, at the moment when you have seen in last 11 years, the defense exports have multiplied by 34 times. from few hundred or few thousand crores, we have gone to 24,000 crores, and we are targeting to 50,000 crores. How it has happened? It has not happened only from the PSUs and DPSUs and ordnance factories. There is a substantial contribution from the private sector also, and there is a substantial contribution where aggregates are getting exported, components are getting exported, sub-assemblies are getting exported, and many current manufacturing defense industries are sourcing many components from this country because we have a elaborate ecosystem available already in the country. And see, in this direction, I also would like to give a message to the MSMEs who are working right now in this country. Those MSMEs who have not entered into defense. Suppose you are a casting and forging manufacturer. Now you associate with a defense company, you associate with a DPSU, and there are large number of castings and forgings required for manufacture of defense platforms. When you switch over from a civilian product to a defense product, definitely the quality standards are much higher. The expectations from you are much higher. Technological levels are much higher. So that will give you a learning, that will also upgrade your capability. And definitely the margins in, if you want to go for defense manufacturing, is much more. Investment is also substantial, and gestation period is also long. So you will have to take lot of time in marching up on the learning curve. Similarly, if you are in the say, suppose you are in the fabrication, machining and components, huge number of components are required. If you are not already there in the defense, you can get into strength. And I would only suggest, when you want to get into defense manufacturing, instead of starting from the scratch, it is better to get into diversification. The product which you are already making, you look for what similar item is required by the leading defense companies, by the DPSUs, and try to get into that. That would be the approach, and move value up in the value chain. So this way, as of now, in the last 10 to 11 years, definitely a wonderful environment has been created, and that is why a lot of interest in defense manufacturing, and lot of companies are entering into defense manufacturing. You see 155 ammunition, there is a global demand. There only ordnance factories were making, a factory in Nagpur, a factory in Kanpur. They were the only two units which were making the ammunition shells for the 155 ammunition, and their explosive filling was run by two units, one unit in Chandpur and one unit in Bulangir. And now you have multiple manufacturers. Even one of the manufacturers is there in the exhibition in the ground floor, who is ready to make 155 shells. And 155 shell capacity in last 4 years, it has multiplied at least by 5 times. Already companies are exporting, and companies are on the point of exporting. There are certain fuses. There are fuses which we are exporting to multiple countries, ammunition fuses. There is a fuse which Indian Army is not buying, but this country is exporting. Indian Army is using an electronic fuse and a mechanical fuse, which is considered slightly more reliable, less costly, and that is getting manufactured here. Explosive filling is getting done in this country, and that is getting exported. Your T-72 components, T-72 tanks are used in multiple countries, and we have full-fledged setup for manufacturing of T-72 components in this country, and 50% are getting manufactured in the private sector. Many companies are exporting T-72 components. BMP-2 components are getting exported. So all this is happening already. And what I'm saying is, when you have this ecosystem available in the country, you are much more capable. Whenever any foreign AIM want to sell a product to you, you are in a much better position now, as you have been there 20 years back and 30 years back.
That is excellent summary of, and very encouraging, I would say, coming from you, because you have seen it at close quarters. I just want to ask you, can you also, you were heading the India-Russia company that was manufacturing rifles. Tell us the experience. That was a new project. And challenge which we discussed yesterday in this project was basically the level of indigenization and technology transfer. So you talked about T-72 tanks, that was like started 30, 40 years ago. This started 3 years ago. So can you compare for us the whole atmosphere 30 years ago when we started the T-72 line and how India was 3 years ago, and this project is still, you were the chairman of the company and this project is still. So what is the difference and what are the lessons you have learned from this particular project?
Traditionally, we have been using 5.56 weapon for almost, you can say, more than 25 years. And 5.56 INSAS rifle is, you say, it is a rifle which, you shoot to incapacitate. When you shoot with this rifle, you expect that the soldier gets incapacitated, and then 4 more soldiers are required to carry him back. So in a way, you are removing 5 soldiers from the war zone. This was the philosophy on which 5.56 weapons were developed, and 5.56 weapons were there with the armed forces for more than 25 years. But recently, you can say around 7-8 years back, there was a rethinking in the army that they need now to shoot to kill. They don't need to, it cannot be limited to shoot to incapacitate, they need to shoot to kill. So then we were to switch over from 5.56 to 7.62 caliber ammunition as well as rifles. And there was a requirement of more than 7 lakh rifles which were required by Army, Navy and Air Force. And then there was a thinking that why not we quickly set up a plant for manufacture of some AK series weapons. And then we got a proposal from government of Russia for manufacture of AK series weapons, and then MOD, ordnance factories put together. We came out with an army, Indian Army, as against AK-47, the government of Russia was offering AK-103. Our Indian Army team selected AK-203, and then at MOD level, we decided that we should set up a joint venture with the government of Russia. So we have formed a Indo-Russian Rifles Limited company with 51%, more than 50% share of Government of India. And that decision was taken somewhere in 2019. And now we have a full-fledged unit. We had an ordnance factory at Amethi. That factory has been converted for the assembly of AK-203 rifles, and its components are being manufactured in our small arms factory, Kanpur, as well as in rifle factory, Ichhapur. And one more decision which government has taken, that 70% is in ordnance factory board and 30% is in the private sector. This is a new experiment, and this experiment so far has been slightly, there is a delay, but it is on a right path. Already more than, we can say, more than 50% of its value is indigenously successfully developed, and slowly we are maybe by the end of this year the target is to reach to 70%, and by next year the target is to reach to 100%. This will be a successful project.
So will we be able to export these rifles at some stage?
As of now, the contract doesn't provide for export, but the kind of, I do say, what kind of influence the government of India will have on government of Russia, definitely we will be able to convince them, and we should be able to get the permission for exporting these weapons.
I want to switch somewhat to asking you about the R&D ecosystem when it comes to our private sector. How much incentive do the private companies in India have for investing money into R&D, number one? And number two, how much of the current procurement policy facilitates R&D? Because I have heard complaints. The problem is that a lot of the Indian private sector are scared to openly come out and talk about the problems they face, because it's one buyer and there is hesitation to speak the truth. But I have heard privately a lot of Indian companies are saying that they are given such unrealistic time frames, such unrealistic QRs, etc., that if they have to meet them, they have no time to spend on R&D, nor is there any financial incentive, and so they land up taking shortcuts, doing screwdriver technologies, and actually not doing indigenous manufacturing in the way we want as a nation. I mean, that seems to be one real complaint. And what is the provision? I mean, even from your experience in the Ordnance Factory Board, how much of, because R&D, unless you do not do the R&D, you will always be just an assembly plant. You will be an assembly unit. And you will never be able to generate IPRs and control the technology, because at the end of the day, and so also tell us, how important this question of possessing technology and owning technology is for the sustenance of the Indian defense ecosystem.
See, in the defense sector, making investment on R&D is a very, very difficult decision. You see, the biggest example what you have today in your country is the ATEX gun. The Bharat Force has really made a huge investment in developing that weapon. It's a 52 caliber 155 mm ammunition, 155 millimeter bore size, and delivering 155 shell at 48 kilometers. And they have proved repeatedly, and now they have gotten probably an export order, and they are yet to get a confirmed order from the Indian Army. There is a proposal on, and they are likely to get the order. I'm not sure they will get that order. But if you look at incremental R&D, there is a lot of work which is happening in the country, a lot of work happening in the DPSUs as well as in the ordnance factories. Let me quote a figure. Whatever ordnance factories produce as of now, 25% of their value, the 25% of their turnover is their own development. We have been based on whatever TOTs we have been getting, based on those TOTs, after absorbing those TOTs, we were able to produce incremental R&D we were able to do, and we were able to produce a higher level models and better models. The T-72 tank, what we have got way back in 1982 from government of Russia. Now when the T-72 tank comes for overall to heavy vehicles factory AVD, we incorporate many incremental improvements. The explosive reactive armor, which was not there part of the original tank, now we are mounting explosive reactive armor on the T-72 tanks when it comes for overall. There are as many as more than 30 improvements which has been done in association with DRDO, and those improvements have been tried out by Indian Army, accepted by Indian Army. So when the tank comes for overall, it gets upgraded. Like that in the field of ammunition, in the field of weapon, the Dhanush gun. See, we have procured Bofors guns in 1986. 1986 we procured the Bofors gun, 400 guns we have procured, and which were the one of the most useful weapon in the Kargil war in 1999. And we had got the TOT, and because of the controversy associated with that project, that TOT always remained in the cupboards. Never it was touched. Not a single component was manufactured. We were living only with the 400 guns. Somewhere in 2009, in association with the Indian Army, a decision was taken that why not we come out with a better version of Bofors gun. Then the entire Bofors TOT, which was purely a mechanical gun, this country, in association with Indian Army, Ordnance Factories, we came out with a higher caliber gun. The Bofors gun, what we imported in 1986, was a 39 caliber gun. And we have gone for a 45 caliber gun, now which will have much larger range, and it is almost a full autonomous gun, almost all electronic gun. From a purely a mechanical gun, we have gone to an electronic gun in association with Bharat Electronics, and by Ordnance Factories and a full support from Indian Army, we could come out with a Dhanush gun, and it is doing wonderfully well. I would say it's a incremental R&D. If you wish to come out with a new product altogether, it's a very, very huge investment, and it's really very difficult.
Thank you. I think, are we running out of time? How much time do we have? We have. Okay. So the other thing is, once you have the product, that's very nice. That's your job and the job of the private sector. Then comes the second job, which is to sell. Now, if you look at a case study, how did you sell to Armenia? Why did Armenia buy from you? What were the political calculations that went into this decision? This is an issue which requires a different set of people to look at it. And that's when the government, and I would say the diplomats and others, come into it. Because in the arms trade business, let us face it, everything is political. And if you look at, for example, even you talked about the 155 artillery shells, I don't think it's a secret that you are basically selling to Europe. I won't name the countries, and facing a lot of opposition to this from Russia. Now, here you have a war going on between two parties, and as you said, and which is true, overnight your production has ramped up, your exports have gone up, but you're doing this consciously. But the other side of one of the two warring parties has come to you and said, we don't like it that you're selling all this to the adversary. So I would only say that for a private or even an ordnance factory, we have to be very, very watchful and mindful of the fact that this is not like selling textiles or something. This, by nature of the product, is 100% political business. Now, if you look at the last, maybe a couple of years, if you just go by media reports, it would appear that overnight, Pakistan has become a serious exporter of defense equipment. And the first market for them are the other Islamic or Arabic countries. Turkey is now suddenly become a major exporter to Pakistan and Bangladesh and other countries. And they have also reached the next stage, which is joint ventures, Turkish and Pakistani companies together. Now, we don't have a ready-made block or a group of countries to sell to. We are on our own. So the only way we can break into that market is through sheer quality and scale and price. And therefore, when we have relationships with other countries, so far, what were the considerations when we developed relations with foreign countries? For example, if I am importing 90% of my oil, I know that I need to have good relations with those countries which possess the oil. So I would say that at time we have reached a stage where to support the defense manufacturing industry, we have to introduce that element of defense exports into our foreign policy calculations. Because without the overarching support from the political level, even our private sector will have a difficulty breaking into the international market. Any comments on that?
See, first of all, sir, I am an engineer, I am a manufacturer, to a certain extent a scientist in the defense domain. I would be inappropriate for me to comment on the geopolitical equation. Wherever my government permits, we would export. Wherever my government says don't export, we will not export. But then I only believe that we should have full-fledged capability to manufacture anything in this country. And for creating that capacity, there has to be an economic model. The industry will venture into any manufacturing activity only when it is a profit making. Nobody is going to sink money, and unless until a industry person looks at a opportunity as a promising opportunity, he will definitely work on it. So that kind of environment, in my opinion, is already created and getting created. Lot of interest has been generated. Lot of industries, everyone is looking at a defense as a promising domain. Why I should not enter into defense? And this is what is helping the country, that the entire industrial ecosystem is supporting the defense manufacturing. So far as the geopolitical part, it is for the government to decide. We as engineers, whatever country's government says that you manufacture this, produce this, we'll do that.
No, that is, of course, that is the division of labor. But in today's day and age, you cannot have such silos, because you are saying as ordnance factory, you will do what the government says. But what about a private company? His primary objective is to have return on investment.
Yeah. But sir, actually anything which is in the defense domain, today you cannot, nobody is free to export. You have to take the permission from Government of India, and that permission means consent of MEA and consent of MOD.
Do you also see that with the revolution in military affairs and technology, and we were getting into the fourth industrial revolution, fifth industrial revolution, suddenly you find a country like Pakistan saying they are masters in making drones. What are the areas that you see where India can do a technological leap from tanks to autonomous to AI to machine learning to robotics? Do we have the opportunity today of jumping the queue and merging what you also mentioned in passing, but which is critical, the merger of civil capabilities with defense capability? You talked about the foundries, but I'm saying, can we use this time, which is not very long, it's just a few years where we have, to very rapidly get into the next stage of technology?
So ordnance factories, basically their focus has always been on the land systems. And but what I have been seeing, I today morning only joined this conference, but I could see the kind of speakers were yesterday, the topics being discussed yesterday. We are really moving much forward in all the domains. We are talking of space, we are talking of drones, we are talking of UAVs. All that we are realizing in this country, and definitely the country is working on that. We are not behind on any forum, and definitely India is going to be a serious player in manufacturing, and the whole globe has to look at them.
So I think really to beef up and promote this whole activity, we need a much more intense dialogue between the private manufacturer and the government so that they're working together, both in terms of searching for markets. Because you can have two ways. One is that the private sector is telling the government, like, that's my market. Can you now go in with the flag and prepare the red carpet for me? The other model is where the government calls the private sector and says, I have created the market for you. Can you fill it?
Sir, actually, this is happening very beautifully, especially the current government. You see what is happening? The defense delegations are going to multiple countries. There will be a defense delegation. There will be leading the delegation would be from MOD, maybe 3-4 officials from Government of India, and there will be more than 25 participants from the industry who are interested in that country in which the delegation is going. So this composite delegation with 1 or 2 government officials and rest all industry leaders going together and going to a target country, interacting with their government, interacting with their business leaders and creating export opportunities. That is already happening. So it's a perfect model of government and private sector partnership.
That is, I think, an excellent note to stop the discussion, because if you're happy with the progress so far, that is good. But all I want to say and leave the thought behind is that we don't have time on our side. We've lost decades. And if we really want to scale up, we first have to trust the private sector. They have to follow the rules of the game when it comes to export controls, quality control, and having a culture of consulting the government so that we genuinely have a public-private partnership which goes to this industry, because there are different countries which have different models. You have the Russian and the Chinese, which are state-owned, Rosporon Export, and other, huge conglomerates who operate in dozens of countries. And they control the defense enterprises, like say in Russia, or they control individual defense enterprises. You cannot talk directly to a company. You can't talk to US. You have to go through. But on the other hand, you have the United States, you have France, you have UK, you have Germany, where the state is not involved, but you have these huge multinationals. McDonnell Douglas, the whole. So these people, these big companies, they control the market, they control the product, they control the pricing, they dictate export control policies. What is the Indian model? Is it going to be state-led companies, which are huge, which are manufacturers like an HAL or something? Or is it going to be huge private sector companies like the Tatas or Mahindras? Or will it be a mix of both? That is something, and then we can stop the.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. Neither we are like Russia, neither we are like USA.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, that's right. Yes, please.
So my name is Group Captain P.V. Singh, and my question is to Harimohan sir. As Ambassador asked you, sir, that regarding the model of export, I want to extend it are you looking at the finished product, exporting the finished product, or the joint ventures and the partnerships where it may involve sharing our IPRs and the source codes and everything? Can you kindly elaborate on this, sir? Thank you.
See, actually, at the moment, we are not looking at, as I can see, the country is not looking at creating a joint venture outside the country. As of now, we may be creating joint venture inside the country with a foreign OEM. As of now, I have not heard of any proposal where we are trying to create a joint venture outside the country. That is not happening. Definitely, there have been inquiries where a foreign country wanted to set up an entire plant with our technology. That kind of proposals were being talked about, but nothing has come on the ground.
There's another question there.
Check. Good afternoon. I am Rear Admiral Mohit Gupta, retired. My question is about the issue of incremental technology and technology absorption. Recently, we have set up this civil factory which has started manufacturing the AK series of guns. So it's a very good thing to do. But the only problem which I see is that is the level of absorption of technology, because you said that you'll be able to make 100% indigenous the gun in about 2 years' time. So are we going to be content at incremental improvements in the gun, or are we capable of producing a gun, the next series, maybe India 303 or something from that, after having learned the technology? Because otherwise, 10 years down the line, we'll again repeat the same experiment. And that's unfortunately been happening, where the level of TOT was just incremental, but never went to a stage where we could have produced our own from the design. Thank you.
See, this small arms, it's a, the way the small arm manufacturing and the small arms requirements, the way they have been happening in this country for last 30 years, it will take 3 hours to explain. It's a something, the rifle is the easiest weapon to understand. And everybody wish to contribute in that. And then when you keep on, changing the demands, the requirements. See, we had set up the factory which was set up in Amethi was for manufacture of carbines. This factory was started in 2007. And 2007 the factory was started. Factory has been set up, but the product has never been decided. And this factory was idle, and this factory is now being utilized for the manufacture of AK-203. There was, I'm telling you, it's a very controversial topic. It is very, very controversial topic. There was an RFP by Indian Army. It will be difficult to share on this forum. They wanted multi-caliber guns. You will have a weapon with one barrel of one caliber, another barrel of another caliber, and another barrel of another caliber. And then you will have 3 types of ammunition. And before going to war, you will decide which barrel and which ammunition. Even this kind of a RFP was floated, which never saw the light of the day. So there are multiple problems from both the directions. We have in the country enough capability to develop any kind of a rifle. Only problem is there should be takers and there should be patronizers कि हाँ बनाइए हम लेंगे. अभी जो आपका AK-203 weapon, it will get 100% indigenous, and if there are any improvements are required, country is capable of making improvements. Even your ARD is capable of making improvements. They have come out with many designs. Only problem in case of small arms has been the patronizing. It's very difficult statement, may not be liked by our armed forces, but as a manufacturer, this is my feeling.
Yeah, this raises the whole question about who decides what. Does the consumer? My own knowledge is that in a country like in the Western free market capitalist economies, this is a circular process of the manufacturer sitting in, let us say, the Pentagon, and evolution is, and the decisions are taken together. It is not that Mr. A will take a decision and tell Mr. B, go and implement it. So the process is consultative and it's iterative. And that's how you keep developing the technology so that you don't get stuck at one level.
I'll give you another example of, this kind of a controversial topic. There was a vehicle required by the armed forces. I will not name the force, okay. There was a vehicle required, they gave a specification. Manufacturer came out with Model 1. The Model 1 tried for 6 months. They gave 300 defects and 200 suggestions. All the 500 implemented. Then the second model again tried for 2 years. Okay. Again some good number of suggestions given. And this trial went for 4 years. After 4 years, it became a perfect vehicle. Okay. And that vehicle was not purchased. And that vehicle, the manufacturer was more than happy that I have a now perfect vehicle, and that vehicle was launched in the civilian market, and it was a perfect vehicle, and it had earned a lot of money. And that all vehicle we have been using 15 years back. I will not name the vehicle, and I will not name the force.
So I think if there are no more questions, we can end this session. Well, thank you very much, Harimonji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that clarity, sir. Now I request Major General Dhingra to please come up on the stage and felicitate the excellencies present here up on the stage. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving for the most awaited event of this PDTS. Thanks so much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause for such a wonderful conversation. The path to global market is now clearer. The opportunities are immense and Indian companies are ready.